everyone. We are here to talk about Chapter 8, Lesson 30. We're going to talk about reading a file to create an array. And of course, we're going to put it on the screen, but I'm also, talking about how it's created in memory. So naturally, we start the program out with our comments that explain what this program does. Here's our header files, our include statements with iostream because we're using cin and cout, fstream because we actually have a file that we're working with, string because we're using string variables, and iomanip. Iomanip allows you to manipulate your output. All right, so here's our using namespace, and then we have integer int main, which is our main function, or also known as function main. And here we are declaring our variables. We have input file stream in file. This is our data type, input file stream, and this is our variable. Now you can make that variable be whatever you want, but the data type has to be spelled correctly. IF stream, that's your data type. We have an integer ID. We have string, which is called name. Our variable is name. We have a string called popular score, that's our variable. We have a character, ch is our variable. We have a string, array name, and I give it 15 elements. And the problem with arrays is that if you don't know how many elements are in it, it makes it very difficult to determine how large you should build it, right? And the same here, I have array score. I made it have 15 elements because the name of the superhero and their popular score go together. Kind of like you and your grades go together, right? And then we have int I equals 0. We're declaring the variable I and initializing it to 0, okay? And that's our little counter we're using. All right, so then we have infile.open, and the name of the file is names.txt. And of course, I've created that file and saved it in this folder with my source file. So here's my names, and it's a text document, so names.txt. And then C++ source, that's my CPP file, where my actual programming. These have to be in the same folder if you don't want to have to put the actual directions on where this is located. Otherwise, you'd have to put, d:\/ whatever, and put the directory information where it's stored. But because I put it in the same place as my CPP file, I can just put just the name of the actual file. Now, if I double click that when I open this and I double click that, I'm not going to, I've already done that, it opens a tab here with all our data, and here is our list of data. So notice it has a pattern. Here is our ID, their name, here is their popularity score. ID, name, popularity score, ID, name, popularity score. Okay, that's our data. We're going to open that file and read it in. Now this says if not in file, so if we can't find that file, then we want it to see out on the screen, cannot open input file. Program terminates. Return 1. So this outputs the notice that says, hey, this program can't run, we can't find our input file. All right, next we're going to read the information in, okay? So while it's not in file's end of file, okay, so while it's not the end of file, I want to infile the ID. So infile is my variable that says read in the ID. Remember up here we did that, we set it up right here. We said input file stream, that data type, and our variable is infile. This is the same as cin or cout, only it's with files. Okay, so we infile the ID, then we infile.getch. What this does, this goes ahead and reads the new line character at the end of whatever that ID is, right? So it goes ahead and gets that out of the way. Then we cout the ID, so we're printing that ID number on the screen. Then we get line in file name. So here is where we actually read the superhero's name in, and we read it in, and we use getLine because some superhero names have 2 words. If you remember, we have Green Lantern, that has 2 words. We have Captain America with 2 words. So we need to be able to read spaces in, and that's what getLine lets us do. We get to read in those spaces, and we want to read name. Okay, so that reads the name of the superhero. Then we want to see out that name, so we're going to put it to the screen with a comma and a space, and that prints out their name with a comma and a space. Then we have array ID. Now here I'm taking the name and I'm going to put it into an array, and each time we go through this loop, that ID number changes because we're going to do this every time, right? So the ID number in our data, it starts with 0, 1, 2, 3. So I'm using the ID as my index. So I'm saying array ID, and that's starting with 0 and counting up each one of those items. And in file, popular score. So that is I'm reading in the popular score. And in my data, that would be the 7.5 or the 10 or the 4 right after their name, or the 8, okay? So that reads that in, and then it puts it on the screen, so I get the score. And then it adds that popular score to my array with the ID being my index. Now, this will print out on the screen, so let me show you what that looks like. All right, so I printed them out on the screen, and here is our ID, comma, space, Superman, comma, space, and then their popular score. This gap is here because I gave every one of these pieces of data, every name, I made it equal to 15 spaces. So I spelled Superman, and then the rest of that is just spaces, hitting the space bar. Batman, and I made it equal to 15 spaces. Why? Because the largest one we had was Captain America, and I wanted them all to turn out even. See how the commas are lined up? So I gave them the same amount of data that they fill in, okay? Now, there is an array. You have a table, right? It's an array, a 2-dimensional array. We go down and we go across. But this doesn't show you how we, filled in or used the array itself. So down here, I'm going to actually open this up, take these comments off, and I am going to, this is my area of my program that actually will print out the array values. So I have a for statement, notice, and I say this list is created by the array values. I have cout, so you know that this list is created by the array values. I think I'm going to put an in, so a new line character, so it goes down a line away from this up here. All right, because this will still print. Okay, so for I equals 0, as long as I is less than 15, because up here I said the largest my array can be is 15. And here's the deal. I just picked a number that I knew that array names would never be bigger than that. And I know that my data is not going to have more than 15 names. The problem is if I don't know how many of these I'm going to have, and I don't make this large enough, then I'm out of bounds. But the problem is if you make it too large, you're wasting memory space. So you have to be careful about the size that you make those arrays. You want them large enough, but you don't want them exceptionally too large or you're wasting memory space. So, and also the time it takes to create those arrays. It's milliseconds, but in a huge program that could add up. Okay, so I'm going to do it for 15, and then I'm going to cout their ID number, and here's the actual ID number. It's the value of I, because ID counts the same as an index, right? And then I have tab over, put the word name, colon, on the screen, and then the array name, whatever the name of that superhero is. And here's my index, so it would do array name 0, which would be that first one at the top. Array, here's the array 0, and the array name is Superman, And then, of course, the array score is 5.2. So array name, and it'll print out the value of that particular array name. And of course, when it goes through the loop, this will become 1, and it would do the name with the array 1, which is Batman. Okay, then this would become 2, and then it would print out the array name that goes with 2, which is Spider-Man. Okay, so it would do that until it did them all. Now I did 15, so that means we've got more than we need. So, and it will print those out as well, and you'll see those. So let's print this real quick. Do a build. There we go. All right, so here's my first list that we already did a few minutes ago that shows the data and puts it in the shape of a table like an array. But here is my actual output. I used the array variables to output this. So I had ID, and it did the number, the ID number. It did their name, the superhero's name. Then their popularity score is 5.2. And then their ID number 1 is Batman, popularity score 7.5. ID number 2, which is your index number, Spider-Man, popular score 10, etc. Okay? Now down here, I didn't have any values for these. So you can see there's nothing printed out there. It's null, it's void. And the only way to control this is to know exactly how much data that you're going to have. If I don't know, and if I'm reading a file I might not know, then again you might know, because I could have gone and looked and saw how many items I had in my list and could have just said 9 for my loop, right? So if I close this, right here I could have changed that to 9, and I wouldn't have had, let's put 10. I wouldn't have had all those empty values at the bottom. So I think there's 10 items. Let me look. So yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. So I could have said, as long as it's less than 11. So let's build it and see what we get. And we should get, we did get 1, so I should have left it at 10 or 9. Yeah. In any case, yeah, 10, because I did 11. This is the 11th one right here. So I should have left it at 10. This is the 11th one right here. But in any case, you get the idea of how this works. So now you know how this works, and this is the end of lesson 30.